Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the Happy Homestead. It is Monday, August 21st. We are jumping right into the fourth week of the Every Bit Counts challenge, and today doing something I haven't yet done in the challenge this year, and that is making pasta. I make pasta maybe 3 to 4 times a year, not that often, but when I do, it is always fun, and it does not have to be this major, overwhelming event. Clearly, it's Monday, it's hectic, it's busy, but I'm gonna make some pasta and take that time and enjoy it. Let's do it together, because tonight we're having pasta for dinner, but I also plan on rolling out some lasagna sheets, because remember I talked about in last night's video that I'm going to go ahead and put some lasagnas in the freezer for this coming winter. So I need to roll out some lasagna sheets as well. It's a win-win for dinner and for the challenge. Let's get started. So there are usually 2 different types of pasta dough that you can make. You can make what's called like a semolina flour dough, where it's just semolina flour and water. And then there's the egg pasta, which is a really fine flour. It could be all-purpose if that's what you have. That'll work fine. Or it could be like a what they call a 00 flour. That just means it's ground really extra fine. For example, my mock mill has different levels of when I'm grinding my wheat berries. 00 is just really ground fine, and so you want that when you're making your pasta. I am using einkorn all-purpose flour for our egg pasta today, which is basically the einkorn all-purpose or regular all-purpose flour. Eggs, it's as simple as that. I am using a recipe that I actually received from Shaye Elliot of the Elliot Homestead. This is a really good recipe to start with. It's measured with everything by grams rather than by volume with cups or teaspoons, right? When you're doing something, whether it be baking or something like pasta that needs pretty precise measurements, weight is always the best option when you're looking at a recipe. I will put the recipe down in the show notes. The way it is written out is for technically 1 serving. So it's 90 grams of flour, 55 grams of egg. I am going to triple this recipe, and I think that'll be enough. So I'm gonna have 270 grams of my einkorn all-purpose, and 110 plus 55, I'm gonna have 165 grams of egg. So let's get everything mixed up. We're just gonna put everything in the bowl and mix it with our hands, incorporate it, and then knead it for 5 to 10 minutes and then let it rest. I like to start with putting my flour in first and kind of making a well in the middle for the eggs. So I need 270 grams of flour. I know you cannot see the scale because my bowl is so big. So you'll just have to trust me. 270 right on the nose. Just gonna make a little well in the middle. Tare my scale. And I need to get to, what do we say, 110 plus 55, yeah, 165 grams of egg. Now, if you would rather crack your eggs and break them into a separate bowl and weigh it out properly that way and not get shells in, like I almost just did, that's probably a good idea. I'm gonna be a little risky here today. A little bit of a rebel. And go right in. So close. 143. So I got a little tiny egg here from newly laying chickens. Here we go. I'm going to save the yolk out. We're at 159, but if I add the yolk in, I think that's going to be too much. I'd have an egg go rogue, didn't I? So we're just going to start in the middle, kind of whipping the eggs or beating the eggs with the flour that's on the bottom of the pan. And ever so gently, I'm widening my circumference here of my beating to incorporate more flour. I'm just going to keep mixing this together. At some point, I'm going to get my hands in here, like now, and try to get this together in a dough ball. You can see we've got, you know, our good dough ball here. It has come together. It's not too sticky. It's not too dry. But now I'm going to knead it for about 5 to 10 minutes and it should come out like this really smooth dough ball that will then let rest. And if you feel you need to add flour to your countertop or kneading surface, then go ahead and do so. I'm going to try to not add too much here, because whatever you're adding does get incorporated in, but you just don't want it to become too sticky or too dry, right? You're looking for that perfect dough. So when you start, just take a look at the clock, and you want to go between 5 and 10 minutes. So I'm just going to be right here, but through the magic of editing, you're going to see this beautiful egg dough formed. I'm 5 minutes into the kneading. I just kind of wanted to show you. Right? See how smooth that is? I'm going to go for a few more minutes. I have not added any more flour than what you saw me add in the beginning, and I have not needed to add any more liquid. So the ratio worked out really well today with the eggs, and I kept that yolk out, right, to get as close to that 165 mark as I could. Well, while I was kneading, I thought I was going to tell you what I'm making for dinner tonight because I'm so excited. I may have mentioned this over on Instagram. I cannot remember. But I don't watch a lot of TV just because I don't have time, but not because I don't. Oven's preheating for dinner. Not because I don't enjoy it, but there is one show that I've been watching occasionally through Amazon Prime, and that is Stanley Tucci's Searching for Italy. Oh my goodness. I don't know if you've heard of this or if you've watched it, but for a foodie, it is such a good show. There's 2 seasons, I believe, and between maybe 6 or 7 episodes per season. I'm only on season 1. I think I just finished season 1. And he basically goes through Italy and he meets up with a variety of folks that cook food for him and make food for him as far as like in restaurants. So he'll go to like Michelin star restaurants, meet the chefs and work with them. And then he'll go to, you know, just someone that's really well known and opened their home within the city to invite him over for dinner. People, subsequent acquaintances of the family, etc. But he has like different levels, right? He's got the professional chef, and then he's got the, you know, the nonna, the Italian grandmother. And it is so good. And so I have already kind of wrote down a bunch of recipes that I want to try because of this series. And tonight is, I think, the second one that I'm doing. I'm gonna say it wrong, but it's like Cacio de Pepe. I can't even remember. It's a pasta dish. It is a simple pasta dish, but that is what I'm making tonight. We're having some roast beef along with the Cacio de Pepe and some bruschetta with homegrown tomatoes and garlic and basil with some homemade bread. And I am so excited for dinner tonight. So that's why I had to break out the homemade pasta, because I think it's just going to elevate the dish and make it that much more delicious. All right, I think I'm good. I've been going for about 8 to 9 minutes now. It feels so good. Let me just kind of flatten it out. So what you're going to do, if you plan to roll this out semi-immediately. You can't do it right now. You need to let it rest for about 20 to 30 minutes. But if your plan is to roll it out after that 20 or 30 minute rest, then you can just leave it on the counter with a towel on top so it doesn't get too dried out. Or you can divide this into sections, right? So you can divide this into 2, 3, 4 sections, depending on how big a section you want to tackle at a time. Roll them in some plastic wrap and put them in the fridge. And so you can make your pasta dough in advance. I would say maybe 2 days. I don't know that I'd go above 2 days, but 2 days in advance, and then roll it out when you're ready. I'm gonna leave it here on the counter with a towel on top. I just flattened it out into a disc for no other reason than it just makes it easier for me when I'm actually rolling it out, rather than having it in a ball that I then have to smush out. I'm not gonna break it up right now. I'm just gonna leave it in my disc. I can't stop. It feels so good. Egg pasta dough feels so good. When you do the semolina dough, I don't remember that it gets this beautifully smooth. The tactile function of just playing and touching with it. It's like Play-Doh. All right, stop it. Stop it, Amanda. I'm gonna cover it with a towel and we'll roll this out in about 20 to 30 minutes. We're back. It's been about probably 40 minutes. Still beautiful. And we're gonna roll this out. So there are a couple of different ways to roll your pasta out. Certainly a rolling pin with some flour on your countertop or your cutting board would be ideal also. I'm gonna be using a pasta machine. I asked for this for Christmas a couple of years ago. My husband bought it for me. And then a year or year and a half ago, I went ahead and got the motorized attachment so I don't have to hand crank it. So that's what I'm gonna be using. I'll link them down below so you can take a look. They are an investment, not as expensive as you may think, but it's worth it if you plan to make pasta. It just makes the process that much more fun. But understand that if you're just starting out, you can easily do this with a rolling pin. If I were doing it with a rolling pin, I'd be cutting this into smaller sections, because while this doesn't look like it could be a lot of pasta, you think about how thin you're getting your pasta, it's gonna make a lot of pasta. So the smaller sections you start with, the more manageable piece you have to rolling out. And then you can use a dough scraper or a pizza cutter to shape your lasagna roll or your lasagna sheets, right? Or you can use your pizza cutter to make like fettuccine or thicker kind of scrappy pasta noodles. So use your imagination, but you don't have to have a pasta maker. Okay, so what you saw me do was take a very tiny piece of my dough. I'll even show you, right? It was just a little piece of my dough. And then I put the rest of it back under the towel. And I started on the number 0, zero. And I roll the piece through each thickness 2 times. And I tried to say, I try like if this piece goes in first, then next time this piece goes in first. I try to alternate it so we can get it really good and evenly in the right thickness. Once I get through 2 times, then I go to the next level. These are going to be my lasagna noodles, and they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be beautiful because it is lasagna. I'm gonna be doing a 9x13 pan. So this was on number 3. I actually think this is pretty good. I don't want to go too much thinner because again, we're talking about lasagna here. So I've got a cookie sheet here with parchment paper. I'm just going to set my lasagna noodles on here. Now, if you wanted to use your dough scraper and kind of clean up the end so it's a very sharp kind of line on the end and it's not the way it looks now, you can do that. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So now I'm going to do another batch. Go back to 0. So there's our fettuccine. I just tossed it with a little bit of flour so it doesn't all stick together. I'm going to repeat this process with all of the dough. And the dough that we're going to eat tonight, the pasta fettuccine noodles that we're going to have dinner tonight, are just going to sit here on this parchment paper until I'm ready to cook later. And they're going to cook very fast. Fresh pasta takes probably half, if not 3/4 of the time that dried pasta takes. So I'm just going to get everything rolled out and I'll show you when it's done. Okay, so we've got our pasta noodles for tonight's dinner. I just have them kind of tossed and coated in my einkorn all-purpose, just so they're not sticking together in a big glob. But I'm gonna be cooking them in about 6 hours or so, so they're just gonna stay here on the counter, covered with a towel, and be ready for dinner. Now, my lasagna noodles, I've got some back here and I've got more made. So we're ready for tomorrow. They are just gonna stay on the parchment paper and left to be dried. It's gonna be overnight since we're gonna be making them tomorrow. Perfectly okay. You can also go ahead and make your pasta fresh like I'm doing and just put together your lasagna right away. You don't have to wait for it to dry. I'm just doing this in a 2-day process, so it's not too overwhelming. That's it for today's preserving project. I will see you tomorrow. Stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.